Ever get that feeling like there's always more happening behind the scenes than we ever really know?
Oh, absolutely. Especially in Hollywood, right? Where image and perception are, well, everything.
Exactly. And today we're taking a look at something that feels very much like that classic Hollywood drama, but, with a modern twist. It's got this digital media company and an online star, and well, it just sounds like a really fascinating situation.
Sounds juicy. Let's hear it.
Okay, so have you heard of Brett Cooper?
Yeah, of course. The comment section.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a few of her videos. Definitely a rising star, right?
Totally. And the Daily Wire, of course, they've really been shaking things up in media. But, there are all these whispers going around about a project they were developing, an alternative Snow White film. And, well, it seems like things didn't exactly go to plan. We've been digging into some conversations about this whole thing.
Oh, wow. Snow White. That's interesting. I'm all ears. So what's the scoop?
Well, our mission today is to really try to figure out what happened. Like what went down, who was involved, and what this whole situation maybe tells us about the state of the media world these days. What do you say? Want to take a deep dive with me and see what we can uncover?
I'm in. Let's get into it.
All right, so let's start with Brett Cooper. If you've seen her show, The Comments Section, you'll know she really resonated with a lot of people.
Yeah, I've seen a few of her videos. Seems like a straight shooter. Someone just says what they think.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe I got, too. There was this real sense that she was being honest, offering a genuine perspective. Personally, I found her show pretty engaging, actually. But then, out of the blue, she leaves the Daily Wire. And the reasons given, well, let's just say they weren't exactly clear. It all felt a bit, abrupt, like there's more to the story.
Definitely sounds like there's more to it than meets the eye. And you said you found some discussions about what might have happened behind the scenes?
Yeah, exactly. And one thing that really stood out was how close she apparently was with one of the producers there. I mean, they were friends. He was even at her wedding, that kind of thing. So it's not just a professional split. There's this personal element, too, which makes it even more strange.
Wow. So there's a personal connection and then this sudden departure. Definitely adds to the mystery.
For sure. And what's even more interesting is that Brett Cooper has apparently been pretty vocal about wanting to break into acting, go beyond just the online stuff and become a real, movie star.
Makes sense. If you've got that kind of charisma and presence online, why not try to translate that to the big screen?
Right. And this brings us to the whole Snow White thing. So you probably remember how Disney announced that their live-action Snow White was going to be delayed.
Yeah, vaguely. I remember there was a lot of talk about it online.
Well, right around that time, the Daily Wire drops this teaser for their own version of Snow White, and guess who's playing Snow White?
Brett Cooper.
Ding, ding, ding. You got it. And at first, some people were like, wait, is this a joke? Some kind of statement?
Yeah, I can see why people might think that, given all the alternative takes the Daily Wire is known for.
But from what we've gathered, this wasn't some kind of stunt. It was a real project they were trying to get off the ground. The teaser itself, well, it was actually filmed in Tennessee, and there were even plans to film the whole movie in Europe once the executive producer, Jeremy Boring, finished up another project he was working on.
Hold on, so Jeremy Boring, he was the one in charge of this Snow White project.
From what we understand, yeah, he was the main guy. The plan was to finish up this other film called Pendragon Chronicles and then move on to Snow White. The goal was to have it ready to go before Disney released their version, beat them to the punch.
Bold move. So where were they going to release it? I mean, was it going to be a theatrical release or?
Their plan was to release it on their own streaming platform, Bent.
Bent Key. That's their streaming service, right?
Yeah.
I remember hearing about that. Didn't they have like a huge launch?
They did. I mean, there was a ton of hype surrounding it. They were even claiming like 1 million subscribers right out of the gate.
Wow, 1 million subscribers. That's a big deal.
Yeah, and here's the thing. From what we've heard, those subscriber numbers didn't really materialize. Ben Key either folded completely or they've scaled things back drastically. They barely have any content now.
That's not a good sign. Kind of makes you wonder, how are they going to support a big budget film like Snow White on a platform that was struggling to stay afloat?
That's the million-dollar question. And this is where things get even more interesting. Because according to what we've been told, this is where Disney might have stepped in.
Disney? Like the actual Disney?
The one and only. Apparently there's a chance that Disney reached out to Jeremy Boring, or maybe it was the other way around, but they definitely had some kind of contact.
Oh, wow. So are we talking about a potential payoff here? Disney trying to shut down the Daily Wire's Snow White before it even got started?
That's the feeling we get from the source. They don't have concrete evidence or anything, but they interpret it as some kind of deal to, basically make the Daily Wire's Snow White go away. And apparently after this alleged contact, the Daily Wire went completely silent about the project. Like radio silent. Hush hush, as the source puts it.
Yeah, that definitely raises some eyebrows.
Yeah.
I mean, if Disney did intervene, it kind of makes you wonder about the power dynamics at play here. You've got this massive established player like Disney, and then you've got the Daily Wire, which is still relatively new to the whole entertainment scene. It wouldn't be totally surprising if Disney threw their weight around a bit.
Right, and then there's Brett Cooper. From what we heard, she was really excited, saw it as a huge step forward in her acting career. But then the Daily Wire shifted all their attention to this Pendragon project, and Snow White just kind of, appeared.
Oh, so they basically just sidelined the whole thing.
That's what it sounds like. And imagine how frustrating that must have been for Brett Cooper. You finally land a leading role in what could be a big film, and then, poof, it's gone.
Yeah, that's got to be a major letdown. And it kind of makes you wonder if that's what ultimately led to her leaving the Daily Wire.
Right. I mean, the source talks about some possible contract disputes, specifically around how the Daily Wire splits revenue with their creators. Apparently, they take a pretty hefty cut.
I've heard that about some of these online platforms. They take a big chunk of the pie.
Exactly. So maybe Brett Cooper felt like she wasn't getting a fair shake. Or maybe she just wanted more control over her own career.
It's interesting to think about this from a broader perspective. I mean, the source seems to really like Brett Cooper, and they even have good things to say about some of the Daily Wire's content, like those documentaries, Am I Racist? And What is a Woman?
Yeah, those were pretty thought-provoking, I have to admit.
But then the source says something like, it seems like they're alienating some of their best talent, which is a pretty strong statement,
Yeah, it really makes you wonder if there's a bigger pattern here. Maybe the Daily Wire isn't the best at fostering and supporting the talent they have.
Right. And, it's important to remember that we're just working with what the source has told us. It's all speculation.
Definitely. But the circumstances surrounding Brett Cooper's exit are definitely mysterious, to say the least. The source even says something like, it sounds like she may have been mistreated.
Yeah, that's a pretty loaded statement. Even if they're not outright accusing the Daily Wire of anything, they're definitely hinting at something.
For sure. And when you look at everything together, the Snow White project, the rumors about Disney, the shelving of the film, and then Brett Cooper's departure, it does seem like there's a story here, even if we don't have all the pieces.
Absolutely. And it's a story that raises some important questions about the state of the media landscape. Like, how do these new platforms compete with the established giants? What kind of power dynamics are at play behind the scenes?
Exactly. So as you're listening to all of this, I want you to think about this. If even a little bit of what we've discussed today is true, what does it tell us about the entertainment industry? What does it say about the challenges and the opportunities for these alternative media companies trying to make a name for themselves?
That's a great question to leave our listeners with. It's a complex situation, and there are a lot of different perspectives to consider.
Right. There's Brett Cooper's side of things, the Daily Wire's perspective, and then you have Disney looming over it all. And ultimately, it's up to each of us to decide what we make of this whole situation.
Yeah, and to keep asking questions. Because the story of how media is made, well, it's never really over, is it?
Never. And who knows what twists and turns are waiting for us just around the corner.